Hey guys, this is Liv here, bringing you guys our Coliseum Murmillo Division draft analysis. Now, for you guys who aren't necessarily familiar with the Showdown draft community, Coliseum is one of the more decently sized Showdown leagues, so I was very, very gracious to be allowed to participate, because I have been looking for a National Dex draft to do. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this. Of course, if you do, make sure you leave a like down below. I would love to try and introduce some more National Dex draft content to the channel, because I noticed at the very least from my non-draft stuff that the National Dex stuff does pretty well. So I know there's an audience for it at the very least, and I know there are people who obviously like the draft stuff. So if you guys do enjoy it, leave a like below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new. Obviously about 40-ish% of you guys are subscribed. Hit the bell button when you subscribe, etc., etc. Comment your favorite pick as well for the draft. And with that said, let's get right into it. So I'm going to be uploading this on Saturday for this week because I was sick right before vacation and I wasn't able to record it. However, this will be going up on Wednesdays, I think. I was initially going to do BBL on Wednesdays and then have it be Wednesday and then Friday for Colo. However, I decided I'd rather just break up the BBL uploads a bit more than just have it 2 days apart. Well, 1 day apart, it would be 2 days apart now. So I felt like I was for the best. With that said though, we got 6th pick in the draft, and I'll be completely honest, while I knew there was a lot of Pokemon I wanted to use, there was definitely a lot of hope lost on certain picks. A couple things that I really wanted the board that I did not think I would get at this pick. And to be fair, I will admit that part of this might very well just come from the fact I'm not super familiar with that Dex, but a couple things that I thought would not necessarily make it to me at this point in the draft were obviously Dragapult. While I've used Dragapult on Wi-Fi, it was obviously not going to make it back to me. Same as Urshifu Single. I knew these two Pokemon were just completely out of the realm of possibility. I also didn't think Mega Gallade was going to get back to me, which I wasn't super concerned about because I'm personally not huge on it. At least I wasn't in Gen 7. I know it's a really phenomenal Pokemon. I just don't really like using it when I have in the past. But it is obviously a really dumb Pokemon to use, to say the least. And I felt like I kind of wanted to give it another chance this generation with things like Triple Axle and its move pool now. However, I did notice a couple things that I really did not think were going to get to me. One was Zeraora. Zeraora at 16 points I thought was kind of a crime. It should have, in my opinion at least, been a max point Pokemon. But maybe I'm just overvaluing it. I know in Galar decks, at the very least, that is a very top tier Pokemon. And another one that I really wanted to try, I wanted to try a few different Megas. Things like Mega Scizor, Aerodactyl, Diancie, etc. These are all Pokemon that none of which were actually 18 points. And to be fair, I get Mega Aero and Mega Scizor not being 18. But I was a bit surprised by Mega Diancie not being 18 points at the very least. Obviously, Mega Mawile and Mega Gallade, those are phenomenal Pokemon. I'm not going to act like Mega Diancie is like better than either, but I do feel like it's at least in the same cluster in my opinion. Again, maybe this is just me being completely ignorant about the format, but I did definitely feel like Mega Diancie was a bit underpriced, so I felt like there was zero chance that I was the only person looking at this Pokemon in the first 6 picks. However, allegedly I was. First pick we actually got ourselves Mega Diancie, which I was kind of surprised about, I'm not gonna lie. Mega Diancie, especially in a format where you do not need to Mega at any specific point, this is pretty useful to be honest, because not only am I able to use Mega Diancie, but I'm also able to start off in regular Diancie, which is pretty helpful. For that 150 in both defenses, this could definitely be used as a really strong setup option in pre-Mega and then set up for the sweep. Things like Rock Polish, Calm Mind, etc. are really useful on this Pokemon. It's a great hazard option too. The speed is really useful. It's outpacing a lot of different threats, things like Terrakion, Garchomp, Mega Medicham, etc. All these like 100 breakers that you're, and to be fair, I listed all physical bonds, but there are a lot of options. This thing can definitely pick off that are in the higher tier. Then it just barely does outpace with that. While it's not a Scarfer at 110, which is, in my opinion, a phenomenal thing to have, it's not really a huge deal because I can always get something around that tier later. Mega Diancie provides us with a Rock Fairy typing, which I felt like was pretty nice to start off with. It's really diverse, and not only what it can hit coverage-wise, because it does still have the things that Diancie gained in regular Sword and Shield, things like Mystical Fire, Player Off, etc., but it also does have just a wide range of coverage. Very not really being able to hit Poisons and Steels, Earth Power for Poisons and Steels, and it also has Mystical Fire at the very least for Steels specifically. And in general, I do think that the typing is phenomenal for it. While it kind of doesn't need to have specifically for Steel's special option on it at all times, I didn't really think it was a huge concern because Diamond Storm and Player Off are still really good physical options if I wanted to mixed with a special coverage for Steel. Wasn't really a huge deal to me. It's a really strong rocker, obviously, with Stealth Rocks and just the immediate speed, and also Magic Bounce to deter other leads. I thought it was pretty useful on this Pokemon. But yeah, I like Mega Diancie a lot. I think it's a really fun Pokemon to use, and I think it's a really easy Pokemon to build around, in my opinion. So I was very excited to get a 6th pick. Now, something I thought that was somehow even less likely to get to me was a round 2 pick, which I don't know how this got to us round 2, actually. I'm going to be completely honest. I think it was just a lot of people were, like, sort of memeing their drafts. And obviously, I mean, to each their own. I know there are a lot of really skilled players in Colo, but the fact that I was able to get this Pokemon round 2, I think was a crime. somehow even more so than Mega Diancie being our first round pick at 6th. And while I do think that there is a chance that I might have overvalued Mega Diancie, I think there's zero chance I overvalued this Pokemon. Round 2, we got ourselves Tornadus Therian. I don't know how this got to us round 2. The 11th pick of that round, keep in mind, because we were pick 6 overall. But 121 speed, I thought this was a phenomenal answer to a lot of things for Mega Diancie. For example, Mega Diancie being able to hit other opposing options such as electric types with obviously Earth Power, and then also more importantly Ice types with Diamond Storm is pretty useful. And then Mega Diancie obviously being able to be a really good fighting check because my Fairy is neutral. So I thought this was pretty useful for the team's energy. Obviously Torn is a phenomenal defog option in case I can't get matchup rounds off with Mega Diancie. So yeah, also regen is really cool on this Pokemon. It helps this thing just be phenomenal offensively speaking and defensively speaking. Boots are a really good blessing as Pokemon. For 18 points, I thought this was easily a really worthwhile option, especially in the second round. I did consider getting Zeraora here, and that was definitely my backup for Tornti going. However, I luckily was able to just barely snipe out a couple people on this who were in the top 5 picks. So I'll definitely take that. Tornti, I think, does definitely provide a lot for us that I normally do neglect. Things like, as I mentioned, defog, ground immunity as well. Both things that I definitely do neglect a lot, as is recent especially. So I'm really glad that I was able to just secure those right away. Round 3, I decided that because Zeraora did sadly go, it went to Kyle, who had the 2nd pick overall in the draft. He got it round 2 in Mega Gallade. So that was pretty broken. However, there was still something that definitely was on my radar for this pick, and while it is similar speed to Torn, I think that they use their speed for very different things, and Torn doesn't necessarily need to use speed all the time because of regen on defensive sets, whereas this is a Pokemon that will always be using its speed, and that being Greninja. Now, obviously, Protean is banned on this Pokemon, otherwise that would have been insane that I didn't get this in round 1, let alone the person who would pick one didn't get it. But Greninja is still a phenomenal option. Being a really fast spiker obviously helps us a lot because we do have spikes in the team now, also T-spikes, which is really important. Something that Battle Bond would not have gotten if we had to run Battle Bond Greninja. But Greninja in general is phenomenal here. Being a really fast spiker, great taunt for anti-leading. Water Dark typing offensively is really phenomenal. While I wouldn't necessarily count this as a Dark type or a typical Dark type, it is still just really good offensively speaking for that typing. Being able to outpace a lot of 120 Pokemon, which is great, it helps fill in the gap between, well, at the very least, fill the gap a little bit more reliably between Mega Diancie and anything faster. Because as I said, Tornti doesn't necessarily need to be running at speed every week. It's a Pokemon that is very fluid in what you want to do with it, whereas Greninja will always just be a phenomenal option to outpace things like your Alakazams, your, I was going to say Raikos, but this isn't really doing much damage to that. Having bad time coming up with examples, but it's also great to force things like Aerodactyl, Coco, etc. have to run their plus speed natures, because otherwise this can definitely pack coverage for things like Hydro Pump for Arrow and Gong Shot for Top Coco, for example. So, as I said, if I want to run a more defensive set on Tornadus, for example, 1 week, I'm able to just run Greninja as my offensively fast Pokemon and get away with it. Not only that, but because of Gren's coverage and its decent mixed offenses, it's able to get away with a pretty good Scarf set here and there. So it's a really nice fast Scarfer just because of its wide range of coverage. It's able to hit pretty much everything for super effectively if you really wanted to. So I do think it's a pretty good option. Obviously, Scarf isn't as great on Torrent as it is on Protean, but it is still definitely a viable Scarfer to say the least for certain matchups. I don't really think I'll be running Scarf with this a whole lot, but maybe in like a matchup or two, it could definitely be a pretty good one for like the faster end, which does help a bit with Diancie because, as I said, it's a 110 that I can't run a Scarf on. I felt like I got a lot of use out of having Friend here personally. So with that said, we get into our 3rd pick of the draft, our 4th pick of the draft, and we got Kyurem. We got this round 4, and I don't know, at this point, I'm kind of just surprised that I have anything on my team together. Kyurem being a base 95 option, it's great because of the fact that while we don't currently handle steals that well, with things like this and Mega Diancie both being pretty weak to it, I can pretty easily patch that in later picks, and I will say that for certain I do. Not only this, but this is able to handle things as, for example, rock typing. We do have Gren for that, and also we have Mega Diancie, which can at least Earth Power certain rock types. For example, fighting types, we have Tornadus, which is able to handle those pretty offensively. Dragon typing with Mega Diancie, so we do have this thing just paired pretty well with everything on our team. Pressure with the ice typing in general, just freeze try against pretty much anything that's not a steel type, is extremely invaluable because we can easily just stall through everything with its subset. We can toxic a lot of things as well. Really, just steel types are the only thing that's really the bane of this thing's existence. But even then, a lot of steels don't really like taking Earth Power off of a 130 special attack. So I do like Kyurem a lot here. I think Kyurem is actually phenomenal in this draft. Then we got our Steel Killer. Round 5, I think I got one of the best Steel Killers on the board. I'm genuinely shocked that this made it to round 5. That purely may just be the Galadex mentality in me speaking. We got ourselves Excadrill at pick 5. So as you can see already, we are extremely top heavy with this team. I did not hold back on budget, and it will only get even more apparent as the picks go on. But I got Excadrill, and I got myself Sand with it. I will not spoil what Sand Setter I got, but I feel like it's kind of obvious with just how many points I've spent so far and the makeup of certain Pokemon on my team, what one I did get. But we have Extra with Sandrush. I felt like this was phenomenal. This gives us our lowest speed tier to date at this point in the draft. And not only that, but it's also our fastest Pokemon at the same time, which is pretty interesting to say about Extra to say the least. With the ground and steel typing is pretty useful because it's able to do things such as kill Fairies for Kyurem. It's able to kill rock types for things like Tornadus and for Kyurem as well. It's able to kill electric types for Torn and Gren, so it does a lot for our team synergy-wise, actually. It's a second rocker on the team, which I felt like was pretty useful. It's also a second removal option besides Torn, which I thought was, again, pretty useful. Right now, we have Mega Diancie with BP, along with Torn and Gren for U-turn, so we have some decent momentum into this Pokemon. However, something I do want to definitely work on, hopefully throughout the draft, is to get something at least a bit slower than Drill to maybe bring it in. However, I don't know how I'm necessarily going to do that because I need a couple things very, very specifically. And I don't know if I can really line it up to necessarily get that, though I am hoping and I can maybe find something that'll work. With that said, our fifth pick in the draft, or our sixth pick in the draft, as I said, I did not hold back on my points. I wanted a really good ground switch in specifically for arrows because right now my team kind of just gets pressured really badly by that unless I'm running defensive Kyurem. We got ourselves Tangrowth. So any sort of ground type that would want to run Gravity or Smackdown or whatever is no longer a threat to my team. The only one would really be Nidoking, but especially with Nidoking, I just run a Scarf Drill, and that kind of gets handled. And I also do have a couple options later on that will help with the specific Nidoking-Nidoqueen matchup, so I'm not really too worried about that. Tangrowth is a great answer to any physical defensive ground. There's really none of the game that actually want to handle this thing, unless they're running a mixed set with like a Flamethrower or something, and have good special attack to do that. But Tangrowth in general is just a phenomenal option. Leechy is obviously very, very valuable here. Sleep Powder could be useful to forcing switches, so then I can double and then try and predict switches that way. Regen is really great, especially with Torrent T. So I do think I'm getting a lot out of this Pokemon. This thing, honestly, these 6 alone could probably come to every one of my 11 matches, and I'd probably at least go with like 7 wins, if I had to guess. It's just a really solid start, and there's not really a lot else you need from here. One of the things I did really want here, though, is a Grounded Poison. And I also wanted a real dark. As I mentioned with Gren, I did kind of allude to this. So if you see where I'm going with this now, you obviously know I got myself a Low and Muck. Another Pokemon, just like with Mega Diancie and Gren, that I can't really use in Galar decks. So I felt like it was definitely something I wanted to seek after. When I was draft planning with my good pal Jay, I did initially mention that, and also my front office of course, but I did initially mention to Jay specifically when I sent the initial plan to my front office that I wanted Drapion, and then I realized a Low and Muck is just right here, and I had the points to afford it. And I felt like it's just a bit better for my team, especially with synergizing with Tang, this being a bit more Spadef, whereas Drapion was a bit more Fizdef. I felt like this would be pretty useful. It's a phenomenal Psychic switch in, unless someone like tricks a Ring target onto it or something. This is also really just good Fairy Killer, which is very, very useful with something like a Kyurem and a Greninja on the team. So I thought this was just, in general, a very, very strong fit to my draft. Obviously, I don't have T-Spikes on this, however, it's not a huge deal because Greninja actually has them. So I'm not really too concerned with that either. In general, I think this is just a very, very strong fit on my team. If I had to dual Dark Gren with anything, I think this is one of the better options to do so with. So I'm looking forward to using Low and Muck here. On to pick 8, this is where we started to really run out of points. To put it in perspective, at this point in the draft, we had ourselves, let's see, so I had 11 plus 8 and 19 points left. Then I had to get 4 picks. So that was sadly one of the downsides of going top heavy. However, I did find a couple Pokemon that I thought really secured my team pretty well. There was one Pokemon in particular that if I was able to get it, I was content with whatever, well, 2 Pokemon in particular. One I knew no one was going to get, and one I felt I had to get this next pick. And then my last 2 picks, which totaled for 13 points, I really did not care what those were. I had a few options actually that worked pretty fine. So on our pick 8, as I did mention, I did need to get another Nidoking check, and I think it's a pretty solid one at least. It's not a phenomenal one, but for 4 points, I think it works. That being Dusclops. Now, Dusclops is kind of just an everything check. This Pokemon is so fat that unless you're a Dark or a Ghost type, you're kind of just getting walled by it. It's pretty similar to P2, except for it's cheap and it doesn't really have reliable recovery. However, Pain Split is pretty good, and same as Rest, to be honest. Pressure and Frisk are both phenomenal abilities, defensively speaking. This sort of was just made to be a really strong Violet Pokemon. And for 4 points, I thought it was pretty useful in the team. Gives me a solid Spin Blocker, which is great if I'm going to Spike Stack. It gives me a solid Fighting Switch in as well, which is great if I don't want to run defensive Torrent T, especially with the fact that my Fairy is also weak to, well, it's also neutral to Fighting, and same as my Poison. So I thought that having Dusclops here was honestly just a godsend. This thing sort of just patches up everything really well with my draft. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. The only thing I really don't like about this is it doesn't really have any momentum going for it whatsoever, which is kind of unfortunate. You know, this thing could have been really benefited by having Teleport. This would be so good with Teleport. However, it's really not a huge deal. I do have some momentum going, as I mentioned, with the Gren and the Torrentee, and I do have things like the Tangrowth, for example, that do benefit at least from switching out. And I'm getting BP with Diancie, so I wasn't really too concerned, but it is just a bit more inconvenient is all. Next on the team, as I mentioned, I didn't really need a lot from this point on. One thing I did want was another Steel Killer, because even though I do have Extra Control at the current moment, I did want something else, because I'm not just going to throw Extra Control in front of every single Steel. There are certain ones that just cannot handle. But I need to get myself something being Delphox. Now, Delphox is another Pokemon that I can't really use on Gallery decks, so that was a Pokemon I definitely did want to try out here. With 104 speed, I thought this is honestly a really strong option here, because not only do we have something that can honestly just be slightly faster than the 100 mark, we also do have something that's going to patch up our speed between Diancie and Kyurem, because there are very specific Pokemon being 110s that maybe don't respect Diancie, things like Lotties, for example, that could just run Modest and go with 248 speed and just creep Kyurem with it. This will at least force something in that sort of speed range to actually respect my speed tiers. So I thought that was definitely a good Pokemon to really gun after. Delphox also being a Psychic type, while it is not a defensive one, at the same time, I have such a strong defensive backbone with my most recent 3 picks, and also to an extent Kyurem and even Torrentee, that I didn't really think I needed a super fat Psychic type. For example, Fighting types, I have Dusclops and Torrentee to defensively check those. In terms of other things that Psychic would want to switch it on, I'll be completely honest, I'm kind of spacing on other Psychic resists. It would really just be like other Psychic types, which I have Drill and Muck that can defensively check those, and also Gren that can offensively check those, so I'm not really too concerned on that. In general, Delphox I think was just a really strong pick for the draft, and I'm kind of looking forward to it, to be honest. It's a Pokemon that I like using when I have used it, though I haven't used it in probably since Gen 6, to be honest. But I do think it'll be a pretty good pick here. On our next pick, we had ourselves a really strong Fighting type. As I mentioned, I wanted to get the Steel Killers right now. That being Passimian. This is the Pokemon that I alluded to earlier, very slow slightly, with the slightly slower than Drill that pivoted in. With base 80 speed, this is a really good pivot, especially with Defiant. Receiver is not an ability that's going to ever matter here, but Defiant is a pretty good one. It's a really strong physical breaker. Right now, my special options were Delphox, Kyurem, Mega Diancie, and Torn, and my physical options, well, and also Gren, but Gren's more of a mixed option. To be fair, same as Mega Diancie, though. My physical options right now were really just Excadrill and then my mixed options. And then I guess DD Kyurem and a little Muck to an extent, but those aren't really like physical breakers. Passimian is a pretty good physical breaker, though, so I do think that I'll get a lot of merit out of this. It's a really strong Fighting type, has phenomenal coverage, actually. For 7 points, I thought this is a pretty good pick, personally. Or actually, never mind, it was 6 points. I mixed up Delphox's and Passimian's cost, but regardless, so still a really strong pick on this draft, in my opinion. So I'm definitely looking forward to using Passimian here. On our final pick, as I mentioned, I have literally jacked for points in this portion of the draft, and anyone who knows me and knows that I like drafting Sand knows that I do like this particular Pokemon in Sand, and I do think it's really, really good for the specific reason of going top heavy with your drafts. You're able to get a lot more out of your other upper picks, and you don't necessarily need to bring Sand on Drill. It's not just a specifically Sand Pokemon. So with that said, I did get myself Hippopotas. I personally like this more than Hippowdon at the very least with Sand. While I do acknowledge that Hippowdon is a phenomenal Sand setter in something like a T-Tar or Gigalith, it's not necessarily as useful on a draft setting when you're trying to get Pokemon that will just function for a wide variety of scenarios. And what I mean by this is Excadrill isn't going to want to run Sand every week. And while you could technically bring a Sand setter to bluff Sand, at the same time, why not just, if you're not going to bring Sand, just not bring Sand? Go with something more defensive or just more varied in your team than just going for Sand. And because of that, I thought the Hippopotas was a pretty good setter. This allowed me to get my grass types such as Tangrowth, whereas if I was to, let's say, go instead of Tangrowth and want to get Hippowdon, Hippowdon on this board was, I'm actually looking, because I'll be completely honest, I didn't, so it was 13 points. Sort of had to get a 1-point grass, and while I could have technically delegated Delphox and then had 8 points there, which would have given me options. For example, I could have maybe gotten an Appleton off of that, or I could have gotten a Bombus for 4 points and then a 4-point Fire. It did definitely take out certain things, so I thought that just having Hippopotas in general was just more beneficial to my team, especially because I got Tangrowth out of it, which I think was personally so much better than getting like a Tangela as my NFE Pokemon, which Tangela I believe was 3 points. It was 5 points. So it had 3 points for like a Duosion or like a Beheeyem or something like that, which I really don't think was really as good. I think the team I have right now is personally better than anything I could have done off of Hippowdon. So I do like this a lot, personally. I think it's actually a really strong team. I'll be honest, I think, as I said, the top 6 come to pretty much every game, and they'll carry. But hopefully you guys do enjoy. Let me know your favorite part of the team down below. If you enjoyed, leave a like below. Subscribe if you're new. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video tomorrow, which is our BBL Showdown Week 1. Until then, peace out, guys.